Greetings. I'll be making a speech today about the Aztec creation myth of the five suns. Preface. Many cultures with a polytheistic pantheon usually carry with them a creation of the world myth. And within the bloodiest of the cultures, in religious wise, is the Azteca culture. And this theology in particular has the creation of the five suns, also known as the four suns. The main characters of the story centers with the most revered god, which appears in all over Central America, Quetzalcoatl, or precious feathered serpent. The creation of the earth through sacrifice. One of the major recurring aspects of the Azteca religion is the notion of sacrifice. Sacrifice plays a very large role in the theology. And according to the Aztecs, the god of universal duality, Ometeotl, they would create the four Tezcatlipocas, named after the cardinal directions: black, white, red, and yellow. These four were given the responsibility to create the new earth and separate the realms accordingly. Xipatli, a monstrous caiman, wreaks havoc as any creation of the four Tezcatlipocas falls into the primordial waters and they are devoured by her. Ometeotl commands the four Tezcatlipocas to kill her, and after killing her, Ometeotl tells the four Tezcatlipocas to use their own blood, to essentially create a new earth. So within this, what actually they're referring to is that when the Tezcatlipocas poured and Ometeotl, they poured their blood, the body of the Cayman, Xipatli, actually becomes the new earth. Her body becomes the crust of the earth. Her long hair becomes the grasses of the earth. Her eyes, which are crying at this point from being murdered, basically, are the wells of the earth. So the four Tezcatlipocas, they're actually named after the four cardinal directions, as said before. The north is the black Tezcatlipoca, and he is the only one who is actually named Tezcatlipoca. He is a jaguar warrior, and his name means smoky mirror, a name he received after losing his leg to Xipatli, which turned his leg into obsidian glass. The eastern Tezcatlipoca, or Chipetotec, is called Chipetotec. His surname is Our Lord the Flayed One. He is the yellow Tezcatlipoca, and he wears his skin loosely despite his horrific description. He's a health and farming god. So what do I mean by wears the skin? I mean, when in terms of Aztec culture, when they would sacrifice someone, sometimes they would actually cut open and wear their skins as a sacrificial donation to Chipetopec, because he was an agriculture god. So that's when they call him Our Lord the Flayed One. And the red Tezcatlipoca in the west is Quetzalcoatl. He is the red Tezcatlipoca, and he is named the Precious Serpent. He is the most revered within the pantheon, as his myths always benefited the Toltec Mexica people. He is the most iconic and shows up with the Mayan people as a Kukulkan and the Tolteca, although we do not know his name within the Toltecs, as currently a lot of their writings are actually missing and or just haven't been found yet. And in the south, we have the blue Tezcatlipoca, Huitzilopochtli, which means left-handed hummingbird. He is the eternal sun and the only god alive, with the exception of Quetzalcoatl, and he's also considered the highest ruling god in terms of his strength. He, according to the Aztecs, fights in a never-ending battle with the moon goddess, and should he lose, the fifth sun, or the fifth creation, would come to an end, which is technically what we are. The first sun, which was characterized by Tezcatlipoca, the black, he basically was placed to be the first sun. And his first people were giants, and since, according to the Aztecs, this was caused because he wasn't a full sun. What do I mean by that? Well, Tezcatlipoca, as stated before, during his battle with Xipatli, the monstrous caiman, actually loses his leg, and he earns an obsidian leg, which is why he's called Smoky Mirror. And since a part of him is lost, he is not a complete sun, so he cannot rule accordingly. And as such, Quetzalcoatl becomes jealous and, using his power of the wind, knocks Tezcatlipoca out of his seat of the sun, and he falls into the water. Tezcatlipoca, angry now that his brother in arms basically betrayed him, becomes a herd of jaguars. And these jaguars basically ravage his own kingdom that he had made and kills all of the giants, and of which only the bones then remain, and they fall into the underworld. And following this, the second son, which is named Four Wind after the god Quetzalcoatl, who takes the place of Tezcatlipoca, Quetzalcoatl makes his people into humans. However, Tezcatlipoca, still angry with Quetzalcoatl, essentially starts to fight him. And in this fight, Quetzalcoatl, being a god of the wind, ends up blowing his humans away, and this is actually how we get the creation of the monkeys. And with this transgression, Quetzalcoatl is left in anger, and he leaves, thus concluding the end of the second son. The third son for rain is the wrath of Tlaloc. Tlaloc is a rain deity, and he's also a god of war. However, Tlaloc, like I said before, was a rain and storm god. And when he became the sun, his wife, Xochiquetzal, the goddess of beauty and nature, left him because Tezcatlipoca the Black was doing one of his cruel ploys to get in power again. And with this, Tlaloc swore to never let it rain again, because if he did, it would bring water and therefore life to nature. And since he basically was essentially divorced and angry with his wife, he swore to never let her reign for decades, essentially. And his people were begging him for rain. And almost out of a petty maneuver, he lets it rain. However, he lets rain fire out of his anger and frustration. And then comes the Emerald Goddess, or Chalchihuitle, which calmed him down and took his spot. And then this gave rise to the fourth son, the Great Water. Following the fire of Tlaloc, Chalchihuitle, who calmed his rage by marrying him, actually brought lush waters back to the earth. And for the larger part, Chalchihuitle was actually beloved and almost worshipped peacefully by her humans. However, again, Tezcatlipoca, if you can notice a pattern, did not like Chalchihuitle being revered in a kind light. And because of this, Tezcatlipoca told Chalchihuitle that her creations didn't really love her, and that she was actually a selfish god. This hurt Chalchihuitle so deeply, she cried, and her being a goddess of the running waters, let it rain for 52 years. And this caused her people to let her become fish. And that is the end of the fourth son. Now, following the end of the fourth son, Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca fight again, and they're passing the blame to each other. It's your fault that my son failed. No, it's your fault that my age was cut short. Ometeotl says, both of you need to calm down. Both of you need to work together to create the new sun and create a new age. So following this, Ometeotl says, stop creating new things. Go to the underworld, or in this case, Mictlan, which is the land of the underworld for the Aztecs, and pick up the bones of the dead. And they send Quetzalcoatl, as Quetzalcoatl is the spirit of the wind being the fastest element in Aztec mythology. And in order for them to have a safe passage, they send him with the god of the dogs, Xolotl. And in case you didn't know, Xolotl is actually based on the real Aztec Mexican hairless dog, El Xoloscuincle, or the Cholo for short. So they retrieve the bone. They go to the lowest bottom of hell, or Mictlan, where the two gods, Micatlicutli and the goddess Mincanticuatl, and they both greet him with reverence to both Quetzalcoatl and to Xolotl, which, for the most part, is going according to plan. However, after Micatlicutli gives the bones of the ancestors of the first creation, Micatlicuatl tells her flock of quails to follow and stop Quetzalcoatl from reaching the surface world again. And in this, Quetzalcoatl, as he's running away, he actually trips and falls into a giant pit where the bones shatter into small pieces. Xolotl says, never mind that, because he hears Quetzalcoatl having basically a sort of nervous breakdown. He says, I've broken the bones are lost. I cannot make new beings with these broken bones. Xolotl tells him, forget about the bones. They will be born different sizes. And that is how the Aztecs sort of explain why we, as humans, are of different sizes. And that is how the creation of the new humans are made. And again, through sacrifice, they all basically either cut themselves and let blood fall into the ashes, not really ashes, the bone meal of the giants, or the first people, and that's how they create new life. And they use this by grinding the bones into the bone meal using what's called a molcajete, which is volcanic rock, which is similar to the pestle and mortar. Food from the weak and from the wise and the weak. So, after the creation of the new humans, Ometeotl asks Quetzalcoatl to find new food for his new creations. And in so, Quetzalcoatl finds a lonesome ant carrying a kernel of corn. Quetzalcoatl brings the corn to Ometeotl, and Ometeotl, which is both Ometeotl and Ometeotl, they both love the taste of corn. They both agree it is a great source of nutrition and it tastes great. So, they tell Quetzalcoatl, bring the mountain of which the corn is hidden in. Quetzalcoatl, with all his might, tries to bring the mountain, but he can't. And in doing so, he uses the last bit of energy and he's tired from trying to move the mountain. So, Ometeotl, they basically ask who can bring the corn, and they mention and actually even ask for Nanahuatzin. Nanahuatzin is a god known as the Humble One, Little Humble One, actually. He is known as the sick god, or the little crippled one as well. So, they command him to split open the mountain by bringing the 4 lightnings of each cardinal direction. So he grabs the black lightning from the north, the blue from the south, east and west with red and yellow, and he gathers them from the 4 Tlalocs of the cardinal directions. So upon grabbing the 4 lightnings, he cracks open the mountain, and out comes all the corn, all the maize, and they use that to feed the humans. And again, this goes to show that in Aztec mythology, they have a reason as to why we Mexicans eat a lot of corn, because it's ingrained into our culture to really appreciate corn, because back then it was seen as a gift from the gods, similar to the wine with the Greeks or the bread and fish from Christianity. The proud coward and the humble servant. So, following the food that Nanahuatzin and Quetzalcoatl brought for the humans, they are ready to create a new sun. So, in order to create a new sun, all the gods they gather in Omeyocan, which is the birthplace of all the gods, the realm of gods, which is similar to what the Mount Olympus is for Greeks. And they all have their debates on who should become the new sun. Texiskakat is known as the proud one. He is known as the richest of gods. He is covered in gold and fine seashells. And he nominates himself. Chachacuitle remarked that we needed someone who was serious and selfless, not a proud and arrogant god. Quetzalcoatl, being the wisest and already worked with a god who was ready to accept a request or order from the upper gods, offered Nanahuatzin. Nanahuatzin, being a humbled one and knowing the importance of the new sun, said, I cannot be the new sun. I am not strong enough. I am not good enough. I am not enough. Quetzalcoatl finally said, you will be the new god, the new sun god. And Nanahuatzin humbly accepts it. He says, I will become the god and I will not disappoint you. So for the following days, Nanahuatzin and Tetzizcacat would actually sit on opposite mountains where they would be sacrificed. Tetzizcacat, being the rich god, had beautiful basket weaves made of the finest material, with incense so pure it basically gave white smoke, which is a sign of purity. And he was given, and his clothes was ornate, covered in gold, the finest she shells, and the finest of pearls. While Nanahuatzin, being the poor, crippled, and poor god, his incense was dirty. His incense was made by literally grabbing a knife and scraping his own skin, and not just like a little scrape of skin. I mean, full on taking chunks of meat and burning it, which would produce a black smoke. And his basket was made out of ordinary grass, but it was humble. His sacrificial clothes were not as ornate as Tetzizcacat. However, they were made by him. So after the period of time, the gods, including Nanahuatzin and Tetzizcacat, they all meet in Totihuacan to view the sacrifice. So the sacrifice involved Tetzizcacat in one end and Nanahuatzin in the other end. They both had to walk up, and one of them had to throw themselves into the fire to sacrifice themselves. In other words, burn away their godly nature to become a sun. So, Tetzizcacat goes up to his edge first. He is scared and actually backs down after the fifth attempt to try to jump. And he hangs his head in shame, saying, I nominated myself for this sacrifice. I knew what I was getting into, and yet I cannot do it. Nanahuatzin, being crippled, gets up in pain, walks up the stairs, goes to the very edge of his on his side, and leaps himself all the way into the middle, and his body begins to burn. And everyone cheers for Nanahuatzin because he was selfless, he was humble, and he sacrificed himself. So, seeing all the praise that we're giving Nanahuatzin, Tetzizcacatl, he runs and jumps also into the very middle, but it was already too late. People already have their opinion on Tetzizcacat. He is a coward, and not only that, he is an arrogant coward. While as Nanahuatzin, he knew what he was doing. He knew he wasn't good enough. He knew that he had to sacrifice himself, and he did so without even any objections. And now we get to the final fifth sun. This is the most important sun, as according to the Aztecs, this is the final sun, really. If the final sun ends, we end. So, as the flesh of Nanahuatzin and Tetzizcacat is burning, a white eagle descends that was sent by Huitzilopochtli, which is the little hummingbird of the south. And it flies by the fire, and it's covered in the smoke, and it turns into the Mexican golden royal eagle, which is in the crest of the Mexican flag. And it's said that the eagle is actually the eagle that the Mexica people used to find where they would settle, which was Tenochtitlan. So, and then it also explained the jaguars and their spots, because the jaguar, allegedly, again, this is all based on very loose records and basically red strings attached, jumps, and he also gets the spots from the burning ashes of the gods. So, the following morning, the gods all bickering of where the sun will rise. Will it rise on the west, the east, the south, the north? Quetzalcoatl, being the wisest of the gods, says The sun will rise in the east and go west. So, as daybreak comes, Nanawatsin's son comes first because he was the first one to sacrifice himself. However, he stops midway and stops in midway of the sky. And soon, Texiskakat's son also rises. And this proves a problem because now there's two suns that are burning the world now because obviously two suns is too hot. One of the gods, angry of Texiskakat's cowardice, grabs a hair and chucks it to Texiskakat, and Texiskakat's son becomes a moon. So now we have the creation of the moon as well with the hair, which a lot of religions or cultures try to explain. It's just a rabbit in the moon, and again we have a rabbit here. So while now there's no more sun, no dual suns, as you could say, it's still hot because Nanawatsin's sacrifice was just that great. So, as everyone else is, cowering in fear because it's too much heat, they can't live, Quetzalcoatl says we must perform a final sacrifice. And all the gods agree. And as Quetzalcoatl is killing all the gods to use their blood and energy and power to make the sun move again, Xolotl basically grew scared. He got scared and ran away, saying he didn't want to die. And he tried hiding himself, but Quetzalcoatl still finds it. He is reprimanded, saying everyone is sacrificing himself. You cannot go without sacrificing, and kill Xolotl. And with that energy combined, Quetzalcoatl flies up in his serpent form and blows all the wind and makes the sun move from west to east. And now the sun is now moving and it's in circulation. And according to Aztec mythology, again, Huitzilopochtli, or the king of the gods, as you could say, he guards Nanawatsin because he is a crippled one. He cannot fight for himself because he is weak and he is sick. So Huitzilopochtli flies with him until the end of time. And should the fifth sun come to an end, it'll be the end of the world according to the Aztecs. Okay, and thank you very much.